Hello and welcome back to Simple Money Podcast, Canada's own personal finance podcast presented in short and informative episodes. I'm your host, Matthew CEWS, also known as the Friendly Financial Coach. Today we're going to shift away from the personal side and focus on businesses, specifically the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy, which just went live today. So one of the largest financial impacts that's occurring from COVID-19 and the interconnected shutdown of society has been on businesses. Like households, businesses are often suffering from a cash flow crisis, characterized by a steep drop in income, sometimes even zero, and expenses that still remain debilitatingly high. Businesses that are paying for rent are especially hit hard. This crisis has led to a quickly growing list of businesses that are shutting their doors for good, sending a harmful ripple affecting business owners, their families, employees, their community members, and everyone financially interconnected. The federal government has responded by creating several different programs to support businesses, typically creating programs that reduce expenses or offer a low-fee lending option. Programs include a partially repayable $40,000 loan, a wage subsidy, a commercial rent payment program, and more. Unfortunately, due to the complexity of creating these programs, only a handful have been launched, and many business owners are loudly stating that it may even be too late. Just last week, there was a survey released by a BIA in Toronto that stated that nearly 60% of surveyed businesses would only be able to pay a portion or no rent at all for May. Also in this same survey, nearly 2/3 of businesses also stated that they would not survive another 3 months under current conditions. Thankfully, one of the major pieces of business relief is coming live today on April 27th, 2020. The Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy helps subsidize the wages of employees in an effort to keep them employed with an income and to cut the expenses of a business. So this is how it works. The subsidy covers up to 75% of an employee's wages if a business keeps an employee on the payroll and is available retroactively from March 15th of this year to June 6th, which is 12 weeks. During this time, the business's income must have decreased by a specific percentage due to COVID-19. Business structures that can apply include individual-based companies like sole proprietorship or partnerships, taxable corporations, non-profit organizations, and registered charities. This subsidy is available for employees that are actively working or for those that are not working but still on the payroll. For employees that are on leave, the employer can also receive 100% subsidy for CPP-EI and their Quebec counterpart deductions. The subsidy is also a fully taxable benefit and will be taxed as regular revenue when taxes are filed for the business. Overall, the subsidy can be a great program to help keep employees on the payroll and help cut expenses for a business. So there are quite a few qualifications that a business must meet to be eligible for the subsidy. The two largest conditions are that a business must be experiencing a reduction in revenue and that they continue paying their employees. Unlike some of the other personal programs launched by the government like the CERB, a business will need to readily support their application. To determine how much of a subsidy a business actually receives, there are two major equations for the program. One to measure the reduction of revenue and the other to measure the actual wages used. So when we look at the equations to measure the reduction in revenue, it can be calculated in one of two ways. They can either compare the revenue from a comparable period in 2019 or compare it to an average monthly revenue from January and February of this year. So giving an example, if we followed the first option for the first time period that this benefit's available, which is from March 15th to April 11th, you would compare it to the revenue that the business earned in March 2019. If they decided to use the second option, they would find the average weekly revenue over January and February to compare the period to. Obviously, it's in the best interest of the business to use the formula that shows the highest revenue to reflect the largest drop. And once a business decides to use one of the two equations, they must stick with that one for the full duration of the program. For the program itself, there are 3 qualification periods that last for 4 weeks each, and you have to apply to each one separately. The basic idea is that revenue must have declined by a specific percentage over the period to qualify for. So for the first period, revenue must have decreased by at least 15%, and for the subsequent 2 periods, revenue must have decreased by 30%. So the next major calculation that needs to be done is to determine the value of employees' eligible remuneration to base the subsidy on. And this, I must admit, can be very confusing. There are two calculations used, and a business can use the greater out of the two. So the first one is to base it off 75% of the eligible current remuneration per week, or $847, whichever one's the lowest out of the two. And the second option is to compare 100% of the current remuneration, 75% of the remuneration pre-crisis, or $847, and then select the lowest out of the three. And for the purpose of the equation, remuneration includes wages, salaries, some taxable benefits, and more. There's also a special rule if an employee is considered to be non-arm's length. This would include individuals like the owner themselves or family members. And in this situation, you have to use the second option to determine how much of a subsidy you receive. So if a business actually wants to apply for this subsidy, they're able to do it as of today. Applications are made through the CRA My Business account, and applications must be made for each qualifying period. Employers are also required to continue to collect and remit employer and employee contributions to each program as usual. Then the eligible employer will submit an application through the CRA portal, basically attesting that their decline in revenue meets guidelines. They will also need to report the total amount of remuneration that was paid. Then once their application is approved, they'll receive the subsidy by direct deposit or by check. The amount of subsidy that an individual receives from this program will also be reduced by the 10% wage subsidy and will also be reduced by any EI payments that were paid through the work sharing program. So that's it for today. Love to hear what you think about the show. And if you're enjoying it, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcast from. You could also contact me directly at info@ffcoach.ca, or you can find me on Twitter at @f_fcoach. Take care and talk to you soon.